everyone, it's Miss Abdel Cotter again, and we have made it to the final day of our week, day 5. I am so proud of you all. You have persevered and continued to push on with me through every day this week, and you have done an excellent job. So you should definitely give yourselves a pat on the back and be proud of yourself. Thank you so much for sticking with me. Let's go ahead and get started on our very last lesson of the week. As I stated, this is our final day, day 5, and we are going to continue on with talking about making inferences using close reading strategies. Yesterday, you all read Malilah's story about our powerful young woman, and you guys went through it and you applied the infer strategy. And today, you guys are going to have the opportunity to do a fun activity at the end just to check everything you've been learning this whole entire week. So just make sure you stick with me to the end to make sure I introduce you to that fun activity. You guys know before we start any day that we always have to go over our learning target. Today's learning target is, today I will make inferences and draw conclusions from nonfiction texts using explicit and implied information. And of course, we now have to do our final day of review so that we can review all the concepts that we learned this week just to check and make sure that you guys have been following me and understanding everything being taught. So we're about to review what does infer mean, what is an inference, explicit and implied information, and our infer strategy acronym. And it's time for our review. So this is like our picture review. We're going to use pictures to review the concepts that we've learned. What word does this picture represent? If you said infer, good job. Infer was our word that is a root word in the word inference. Remember, we said it was an academic vocabulary word that meant read between the lines. Good job. Let's look at the next one. What does this equation represent? If you said an inference, good job. The first picture is text evidence, looking in the text for text evidence, and the second picture is a representation of your background knowledge. So text evidence plus your background knowledge, your connection to the text, equals an inference. Good job, guys. For our third one, we have a picture where there's a finger pointing directly to something in the text. What does this represent that we have learned throughout this week? Does this image represent explicit or implied information? If you said explicit, you are correct, because explicit information is where information is clearly stated in the text. Last one. What does this image represent? Does this image represent explicit or implied information? If you said implied, then you are absolutely correct, and I am so proud of you. Good job. You guys should give yourselves a pat on the back. You have successfully completed our first half of our review. Now let's move on to part 2 of our review. So here we are with our acronym INFER, which is the root word of inference, and it means to read between the lines. And we know an inference is when you take evidence from the text, from your background knowledge, to make an inference. So we learned that this INFER acronym was an acronym that we would use, and we would follow the steps to guide us in making an inference while we're reading fiction or nonfiction text. So let's see if you remember what INFER stands for. What is the first step in infer that starts with the letter I? If you said interact with the passage and pull important details, then you are correct. So then what does N stand for? Yes, N stands for note what you think about the important details. And after we do that, our next step would be to find connections. And after we find connections, we move on to the very next step that has a very important academic vocabulary word in it that we talked about earlier this week that means to judge. Does anybody remember what that word was and what E stands for? That's right, E stands for evaluate the supporting details. Once we have done all of these steps, we make sure that we return to the question to make an inference. Good job. You guys have done so great. I'm so proud. Oh, so proud of you guys. Well, guys, that's it. We have finally finished day 5, our last lesson of the week. And if you bear with me just for a couple more minutes, I'm going to go over your independent activity. It has been a joy working with you all. Let's go ahead and review your independent activity before I let you go. So your independent activity for today is inference task cards. So when you get to it, you can either go through this link or click on them in your activity link. And it's going to look a little like this. Immediately, it's going to bring you to a Google Slides. You want to make sure you hit the present button, and there you'll see passages and multiple choice questions. On a sheet of paper, you're going to want to record your answers after you read each passage. And before you move to the next slide, the correct answers will be circled for you. So keep track and keep score so that you can see how you did on each assignment. I know you'll do very well because you've done excellent every day this week. With that being said, I have enjoyed working with you all every day this week. I hope you are able to understand everything that goes into making inferences with nonfiction text using explicit and implied information. I hope you all have a great weekend. It has been a pleasure working with you all. Bye.